Hey folks, today I'm going to be bringing you a whole new build, and this time we're going to be digging a little bit into Mana Strike. If you like this sort of content, please leave a like on the video, as it lets me know this is what you enjoy. And yeah, let's jump right into it. So the idea of this build is that we're combining a bunch of the different things that we've used in our previous Frostclaw build, as well as a few other new ideas that really synergize together quite well. So you can see here as I'm attacking this dummy with the Mana Strike, there's a bunch of different triggers and procs and stuff going on here, and all of them are applying spark charges. And we're reusing a lot of the gear from our Frostclaw build. This is all int stacking gear. So you can see right here I have 206 int with the spark charge. So that is 412 flat lightning damage added to spark charge. So this is where most of our damage comes from, same as the Frostclaw build. Except in this case, instead of using Frostclaw doing Novas, we are using Mana Strike with Dragorath Claw. So the synergy here with the Mana Strike and Dragorath Claw is that in the Frostclaw tree, there's a node here which gives you a chance to cast on melee hit. So the way the trigger chain works is you cast the Mana Strike, and then because it's a melee, you get the Frostclaw. The Frostclaw shotguns, and they can all crit. And these crits, because of the Dragorath Claw here, 42% chance to cast Lightning Blast on crit. That then chains again into Lightning Blast, which then applies even more spark charges. And it also synergizes with our other spark charge because it early detonates them, making our clear significantly more smooth. So here you can see we have this whole spark charge tech in here. And we also use the closed circuit tech that has been brought up in a few of the other builds posted recently. So this allows us to chain to ourself with the lightning blasts and buff our own crit chance and damage. So you can see my character sheet here, we're at 92% crit. We start casting. Now we're at 114, 125, and that also buffs our lightning damage. So all that synergizes really well together, and they're all blowing up spark charges all over the place. So that's kind of the basis of the skill. Everything here works together really nicely. All we have to do is hold right click, and even the enchant weapon, it auto casts itself. So we don't really have to do much. We'll quickly go into the skill trees to explain how it works a little bit. So in the Mana Strike, what I found was that it is very important to take the ranged Mana Strike. Otherwise, you're moving over to enemies to hit them. It's not that great. The ranged is a huge quality of life. And also the auto target, you pretty much just hold right click down and stuff dies from all the triggers chaining. So this works really well. We also really need to grab every bit of attack speed we can because it is hard to scale attack speed. We don't have ladle anymore for massive amounts of cast speed. We have to get attack speed everywhere. Then we also have Spark Charge in the Mana Strike tree itself. So there's 100% here. We get a little bit of ward on hit. And then another really important node here that was suggested by Rogue Yoshi was the Mana Storm. And this actually hits every enemy in a pack. So if you're Mana Striking, it just triggers onto everything and they can all apply Spark Charge. So you basically instantly shotgun groups of enemies and you do massive AoE damage through this. It's really strong. I found it was hard to sustain the mana with this, so I put a few extra points into the minus mana cost here. So this gives us a lot of extra damage. In the Frostclaw tree, I didn't grab any of the extra casts, and they don't actually provide much value anyway. It's a lot more important for us to grab all the minus mana we can, as well as Volley of Glass for the shotgunning, so we get the extra Enigma procs and also Lightning Blast procs through the crits. And just in general, we get a bunch of ward on crits, so this is by far a lot more important than anything else. And then I just grabbed a bunch of mana efficiency. You could probably grab Novas, but we can't really fit this into our skill selection because we just don't have enough slots. So that's why I spec'd it this way. In the enchant weapon, it's very important you grab the attack speed. This is 50%. And once you have a decent amount of cooldown, as I do currently, you can see here the cooldown is 8.3, and the duration has a base of 5 seconds plus 4, so it's 100% uptime. Here I just grabbed a little bit of shock. It's not that important, but it's nice to have. We have some chill here, and I have some icicles shooting out. I don't actually know if they do anything useful. They might apply spark charge, but I haven't tested it. There wasn't really a whole lot else I could have put this in that was useful. I tried Zap. Zap doesn't apply spark charges, so I unspec'd it. And then down here, we have minus mana cost. This is nice. And here we have the auto recast. This is just a quality of life. You don't actually need this, but I took it because there wasn't much else to put points in. Then in the runic tree, I actually spec'd runic as a traversal. So this seems like it's bugged. I'm not sure if I'm understanding the tooltip here, but it says cooldown +5, but it seems like that doesn't actually happen. So you can see here, we have our runic, and it is a traversal skill. I tried to use Flame Rush. If you could fit it in, it gives us Frenzy, which is 20% attack speed. This is a huge buff. It's very nice. But I found that I couldn't really replace anything here with Flame Rush. It's a little bit unfortunate. You could potentially drop Lightning Blast, but I tried it. The damage loss was huge, so it's important to keep this. You might be able to drop Enchant, but it's 50% attack speed. It's very hard to drop. Yeah, so I couldn't find a room. So I made the Runic Invocation as a traversal, and I kept pretty much everything else the same. I don't know about these runes here. We don't actually stack the Runic Energy up that fast, so this might not be optimal. As far as the runes that you actually want, we're still using Immutable Order, so you do want Cold, Fire, Cold for the Frost Guard. So you can see here, we have the Rare Winds Frost Guard. This is a cold spell. This says elemental, but it actually acts as fire. And this is also a cold spell, so we do get the cold, fire, cold with this configuration. This is very important that we have this because it's 30% DR. Then otherwise, to quickly touch again on the lightning blast, the way it works is we need to get the extra chains here. So we have some chains, and then it bounces to yourself, gives you crit chance when it does so. This is really important. Gives us a bit extra mana cost too, which we get ward per mana spent. It's not a huge buff, but it is nice to have. Next, let's jump into the passives. I'll start with the Mage tree. So you could probably play this build as either Spellblade or Sorcerer, but I do think it's best as Runemasters. We get the Frost Guard. It's very strong. You get all the DR. But jumping into the Mage tree, I am taking the Reactive Ward Tech still. I think this is very strong. It's definitely worth taking. And if you are going with the low life setup, which you can with this build, you get even more because it's based on your max life. This reduces the cooldown to 6 seconds. So every 6 seconds, you get about 87% of your max life is ward. Works out to about 14 or 15% per second. So that is quite a lot. It's basically as strong as an experimental affix on your glove or an exsanguinous, pretty much. So if you are stacking a bit of life, this will give you huge value. Even if you're not, it's still very strong. Otherwise, we have int here because we're still stacking int. It's very important. Instead of the lightning here, because we have so much, I just took a bit of health. It doesn't actually matter a whole lot what you take. I could even unspec this and put it somewhere else. In the Runemaster tree, we don't care about cast speed anymore, so I took away all of the cast speed nodes, so I just take this as pathing. We have int here. We don't do direct spell cast, so this doesn't give us that much value, but the int is important. Then here we still have the crit reduction and int. So this is a very important node for your defense, and also int. Here we have area skill use. Mana Strike is an area skill, so this does give us a lot of ward. This is per rune. It's very significant. It is direct use, so it doesn't work on Frostclaw. Here we have a bit of crit chance. We probably don't actually need this because we are getting a bunch from the closed circuit in Lightning Blast. But if you don't have enough crit chance, you can take this. Then we take the +10 int here, and it gives us a bit of cooldown reduction. This is pretty nice to have. And for 1 point, we also get +10 spell lightning damage, so this is pretty good too. For a 1-pointer, it's definitely worth taking. And then here we have a bunch of crit multi, and we do a lot of crits, so we get ward on crit and a bunch of free crit multi, so definitely take this. You might even be able to put 5 and 5 if you take another point out somewhere else. It could be worth taking. Then in the Spellblade tree, this is where we've changed things up a bit. We've taken some travel points here. So 2 this is just for travel. Then here we gain ward on elemental melee attack, hitting an enemy. This is a fairly significant amount of ward. It's not too bad. And then this is very important. We get DR here. So this is 10% DR. Get a shield on melee hit. And then here it is minus 60%, but up to 4 stacks. So that works out to, in total, I think you get 14 or 15% DR from this. And potentially you could get more points into this for increased armor. It's quite a lot. It'd be 20% increased armor per shield. So I think that'd be 80%. So that is quite a lot. I don't really have the points for it. Here you get extra spark charge chance. So this takes you from 100 on the mana strike itself to 125. And then here we get some ward and attack speed. So these are very important nodes here. Then in the Sorc tree, we just put 5 points here. You could put another 3 if you have points to spare. Int is always good, but mainly the spell crit is important. Moving over to gear, there are a few different gear options that you could go for. Personally, I found the Dragorath Claw perform the best as a weapon. You could also try and go for something with a bunch of attack speed, so like maybe even Hummingbee if you could get one with some LP on it that's actually good. There's ward on hit, some attack speed. It's important to have your base attack rate as high as you can. Dagger's a little bit higher. There's a few weapons that are even higher, like the Scimitar here, but the base type is not that great, and the Claw does have crit chance, which frees up our Helm for Bone Clamor or whatever you want. I think this is a pretty good setup. This Renegade's Will has 50% melee attack speed, but it has a really slow base attack rate, so I didn't find it was actually worth using, although it is easy to get LP. So maybe there's some potential here. As for the rings, I still think Red Ring is the best if you have them with LP. Otherwise, you could probably use the same rings as the Frostclaw setup. So like T7 int rings or JULRA's rings with something useful. Anything like that would probably be good. The belt, I don't know if Strands of Souls is still best in slot because we don't spend as much mana per second. However, it's still fine. You get some mana spend gained as ward. That probably works out to, I don't know, maybe 80-ish ward per second, something like that. And then some ward retention. You could definitely find a better belt than this. Even something like this, a Exalt belt with armor on it, and you can get health and some other good stats. This is probably better. For the boots, I still think these are going to be the best boots if you are going int stack. You just get so much int, it's very good. An alternative, if you are going fully into the low life setup, would be Last Steps of the Living. I didn't have a good one because I haven't been farming that boss, but if you have one with T7 int and maybe health or something like that, this would be pretty good. For the gloves, you have a few options here. I have cast speed, so this gear is definitely not optimized. This is my Runemaster Frostclaw build gear, so not optimized for mana strike. So yeah, if you had basically this except with attack speed, it would be quite good. Another option would be T7 attack speed, I think is actually worth it over T7 crit. You'd have T5 int and T7 attack speed with a experimental affix that you insight craft. So what you could do is you insight craft either the low life. If you want to not go the low life, you can just get like a tier 1 low life affix, something like this, but like a tier 1 would be enough. It's really important that you can get your health lower so that you proc reactive ward. You see here the reactive ward proc. You need to be below 70%. So some way to drain your health is mandatory. So in this case, you could do that. Otherwise, if you're just going full low life, you probably want a higher tier of this. Maybe even a T7 would be worth it. It's really hard to say what's best. It's probably preference, but it's definitely easier to find T7 int or T7 attack speed and then insight craft. Yeah, so other than that, I'm still using the Twisted Heart of Ukaros. I don't actually think that this is best in slot. We don't benefit from the cast speed. We don't directly cast spells. we just get +1 levels, but this is what I already had for my build, so I threw it on. Yeah, you could definitely find a better relic. I think the Necrotic Grimoire might be okay, because it's another source of health drain. So if you want to not play low life, you could use the Necrotic Grimoire, and then you just pop a potion and it'll drain your life. Then you can proc your reactive ward through that. So that's another option. The Enigma here, this is basically mandatory. The Enigma gives you the spark charge, gives you this lightning scaling. You need this for the build, it's how it works. The chest piece, I'm currently using Sanguinis because this was the only piece of gear I had that I could realistically slam int on and then use for my build. This is an option. If you're going full low life, you definitely want this along with the other pieces. But if not, it's still an okay option. I do get a decent amount of passive ward from this and the Bone Clamor, which is nice. But I think ideally, if you're not going pure low life, you want something like Core of the Mountain or Static Shell, Prism Wraps, Unstable Core, stuff like that. Then for the helm, you have a few options, but I think if you're using the Claw, which gives crit, this is probably the best because it has base int, a bunch of armor, 3 ward per second, all sorts of good stuff, and it's somewhat easy to get LP on. This is a good one. You also have the Prismatic Gaze. If you want a really easy time capping your crit, you can combine that with the Claw to have +8% base crit. So that would take you to 13 in total, and then you basically be crit capped very, very easily. The slimes, this is probably what you want. Crit multi-melee attack speed. There is no lightning pen on daggers, so you can't get that. Shred is good, blind is good, stun chance is good. There's a few other good ones here. For the Enigma slams, cast speed is obviously not helpful for me because I don't cast anything. So alternatively, you'd probably want crit multi here instead. This would give me a lot more damage if I had that. For the necklace, you do need frailty somewhere because we're not using ladle. So we need some source of frailty. This is a good place to get it. There's a few other places you could get it, but I found this one to be the easiest. I still do have an open suffix on this that I could put something on, but for now this is fine. You get your spell crit here, crit multi. You could even get lightning pen. There's a few unique options you could use here. You could even use a Jade Amulet for a bit more melee attack speed if you want. It's up to you if you think you need the less damage taken. If not, then probably want a Jade Amulet. Then moving over to the idols. Here we have the Spark Charge on melee hit. This is pretty important for your damage. You can get them in the Ornate Idols and also the Grand Idols. So these go up to 17. The big ones go to 25. So in total, you could get 34 plus 50 is 84. So an extra 84% Spark Charge. So that with the passive tree for Spellblade plus the base chance on Mana Strike, you're at over 200% Spark Charge per Mana Strike, which is quite a lot. So in total, we have the 200% there. We have the 3 hits of the Frostclaw doing the shotgunning. They're all applying the Enigmas themselves. We have the Lightning Blast applying Spark Charge, and then also more through the node here. Then we have the extra casts here doing Spark Charge. We have a lot of different things applying Spark Charge all at once. So it is quite strong. Then for the rest of the idols, I have some health ones here to get a little bit more health. You can replace this with other stuff. Maybe Stun Chance would even be good. I don't know. There's a bunch of different options. You could get flat armor. You could get res if you're missing any res. A lot of good stuff here you could swap out. For blessings, I still have pretty much the same stuff here. I think armor is really important. All res is really important. Crit multi is good. Experience if your COF is important. Lightning Shred, I think, is useful. Overall, I've been pretty impressed with how this build turned out. I think the easiest comparison is to the Frostclaw build, which is definitely one of the strongest builds in the game right now, and I think this build actually performs fairly well compared to my Frostclaw, which has much better gear. This I just threw together with random gear. The single target damage is actually fairly similar. Surprisingly similar, actually. The AoE damage for this build, because of all the shotgunning it does, I think it's actually higher versus a lot of like trash mobs running at you. You just shotgun them like crazy. It's huge damage. It's hard to compete with the Novas though, so there's that. I definitely think that it is a bit less survivable. We just don't have as much mobility if we're taking Runic, and if we take Flame Rush, we lose a bunch of our... we have to give up a lot, so that's not great either. We definitely don't build as much ward numbers, at least with my current gear, which is pretty far from optimized. We're working with like a bunch of cast speed, which doesn't do anything, so there's definitely a lot better that this build can get, and I'm quite confident that it should be able to do like over 4,000 corruption with the correct gear setup. So that would be really cool. Yeah, so it's definitely a really good build. And also talking quickly about the boss killing for this build, you can still use the STUNLOCK setup. So if you're fighting Shade, for example, you can just pop on this amulet and get a bunch of CDR. I'll post the link to the video tutorial in the description for that. But yeah, it is the same as the other build. You just need to unspec something before you fight Shade. So I would say unspec Runic and then spec into Snap Freeze, go with the Snap Freeze tech, and then you can just stunlock Shade and do it the same way as the Frostlow build. And once you get it low, below 25, if you want, you can just swap in the Last Laugh and pop it with the Mana Strike, which is a melee ability, execute it. So yeah, that's also an option. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for today. I hope you guys found this useful, and cheers. Have a good one.